There are men who rise through luck, and then there are men who rise through loss. The true leaders of history are not born in comfort. They are forged in chaos. Their victories are not accidents, but the results of pain transformed into purpose. This story is about such a man. A man who lost everything, faced betrayal, tasted defeat, yet refused to stay broken. He turned his suffering into strategy, his wounds into wisdom, and his failures into foundations for greatness. His empire wasn't built with gold. It was built with faith, discipline, and an unbreakable will. What if the greatest blessing in your life comes disguised as a defeat? What if losing everything was the only way to find your true strength? That's what happened to him. When the world turned its back on him, he didn't collapse, he rebuilt. When his name was dragged through the dust, he didn't hide, he rose. He didn't fight for power, he fought for purpose. Because while others saw failure as an end, he saw it as a test from Allah, a chance to prove that no setback can destroy a soul guided by faith. He was born in the dust of hardship, in a land where survival was earned, not given. His childhood was carved by poverty, by hunger, and by the absence of comfort. Yet within that pain was a seed of fire that hardship unknowingly planted in his heart. Every morning, he woke up to the reality that the world gives nothing freely, and so he learned early that if he wanted strength, he would have to take it from the hands of life itself. His early years were not a tale of privilege or opportunity, but of determination. While others looked for excuses, he searched for ways. His feet walked barefoot on scorching earth, but his heart dreamed of command, of influence, of becoming someone whose presence could not be ignored. Each struggle became a silent teacher, showing him that weakness was a choice and resilience was an act of faith. From the walls of silence, he observed the power around him, the rich, the soldiers, the rulers, and he asked himself, why not me? That single question ignited his journey. It was not arrogance that drove him, but a belief that no man should remain a victim of fate if he has the courage to fight it. That thought grew inside him like a burning flame that could not be put out. Life did not show mercy. Every setback came like a storm meant to break him, but storms do not scare men who learn to dance in the rain. He began to see hardship not as punishment, but as preparation. When hunger came, it taught him discipline. When betrayal struck, it taught him silence. When fear surrounded him, it taught him faith in his own will. In those early days, he built his body and mind through struggle. He trained his thoughts to stay focused even when everything around him was chaos. He spoke little but listened deeply, learning how people think, what they desire, and how they can be led. In a world where power belonged to the loud, he discovered the strength of being calm like a lion before the strike. He carried the scars of his youth not as shame, but as symbols of what he had overcome. Every scar was a memory of survival, every loss a reminder that he could endure more than he thought possible. Through pain, he found pride, not pride in wealth or title, but in his ability to endure what others could not. He knew that a leader is not born in comfort, he is forged in chaos. Every moment of struggle was shaping him for the days ahead, though he did not yet know it. When he looked back, he realized that his greatest teacher was not a person, but life itself, life with its cruelty, its unfairness, and its constant tests. He began to see himself differently. He was no longer the boy from the dust. He was a man being built by destiny. The hunger in his stomach became hunger for power. The isolation of his childhood became his strength in leadership. The silence that once hurt him became the very weapon he used to control others. The people around him started noticing his presence. His eyes held focus, his walk carried authority. He was still young, but there was something in his aura, a quiet intensity that demanded attention. He had learned that real strength does not shout. It stands firm when the world shakes. As the years passed, the boy who once had nothing began to gather influence. He did not rush. He knew timing was everything. The hardships of his youth had taught him patience, that every great empire begins not with victory, but with endurance. And so, from the ruins of poverty, he built the mindset of a man who would one day rule with fire, faith, and unbreakable will. His dream was not born from comfort or luxury, but from the hunger to rise above humiliation. He watched his homeland and its people live in fear and weakness, and something within him refused to accept it. He believed that a nation without pride was like a man without a soul. In his heart, he carried a dream not just to gain power, but to give his people back their lost sense of strength and identity. Every day he saw injustice and weakness, and every night he promised himself that one day he would be the one to change it. From a young age, he studied not just books, but human behavior, how leaders control, how armies move, and how fear can rule hearts. He realized that power is not just in weapons, but in the ability to inspire belief and fear at the same time. His dream of power was not blind ambition. It was a mission to make his people believe that they were not meant to be slaves to anyone. He wanted to turn shame into strength and defeat into determination. As he grew older, that dream began to shape every decision he made. He learned to keep his plans hidden and his intentions silent. He understood that those who talk too much about their dreams often lose them before they start. So he carried his dream like a sword kept inside its sheath, unseen but always ready. His silence made people underestimate him, and that was exactly what he wanted. He began surrounding himself with people who had influence, not to follow them, but to study them. He watched how they gained power, how they held control, and where they made mistakes. Every conversation was a lesson. Every handshake was a test. He was building his foundation one move at a time, learning how to climb the ladder without letting anyone notice his ascent. His dream gave him clarity when others doubted him. He had seen the pain of weakness too many times to ever want to live powerless again. He wanted to be the kind of leader who could walk into a room and make even his enemies hesitate to speak. His goal was not just to rule. It was to restore strength where fear had taken over. In his mind, power was not greed, it was protection. He trained himself to see through deception. He knew that the world of politics and war was filled with liars, traitors, and opportunists. His dream could not survive in naive hands, so he built a heart that could endure betrayal and a mind that could stay calm in chaos. He believed that a man who cannot control his emotions will always be controlled by others. As he moved closer to power, his vision became clearer. He wanted to build a system that would stand even when he was gone. He knew that true power was not in a throne, but in the loyalty of people and the fear of enemies. He wanted to be remembered, not as a ruler who demanded obedience, but as one who commanded it through respect and strength. His dream began to attract followers. People who had lost faith in their leaders started seeing hope in his determination. They admired his confidence, his discipline, and his ability to stay calm under pressure. To them, he was not just a man, he was a symbol of possibility. His words were few, but his actions spoke loudly, and that silence made his power grow faster than any speech could. He never saw power as an end, it was always a means to something greater. He believed that once a man has tasted power, he must use it with purpose or it will destroy him. His dream was to be remembered as the man who rose from nothing and rebuilt a broken nation with his will alone. That belief gave him energy to move forward when others quit. Every challenge he faced only made his dream stronger. He began to realize that the closer he came to power, the more dangerous the path became, but he was ready. He had already faced hunger, betrayal, and loss. Nothing frightened him anymore. The dream that began in pain was now guiding him toward destiny. To him, power was not just control. It was the proof that his suffering had meaning. Before he ever tasted victory, he tasted defeat, bitter, cold, and unforgettable. His first attempts at rising through the ranks met resistance from every side. Those above him mocked his ambition, those beside him doubted his ability, and those below him feared his will. Yet even as the doors closed in his face, he learned something vital. Defeat is not the end, it is the sharpening of the blade. Every rejection became fuel for his determination to return stronger. There were times when he thought everything he had built would collapse. Plans failed, allies turned against him, enemies spread lies that almost broke his name. But in those dark moments, he did not panic. Instead, he watched, learned, and adapted. He began to see that defeat was not always a curse. Sometimes it was a teacher sent to reveal who was truly loyal and who was only pretending. When betrayal came, it did not crush him, it cleansed his circle. He realized that those who left him during hardship were never meant to stand beside him in power. His defeats taught him the importance of patience and silence. He stopped explaining himself to anyone and started letting results speak for him. The fewer people who knew his plans, the fewer could destroy them. He began to change his way of thinking. Before he chased victory, now he studied it. He examined his enemies, their strategies, their weaknesses. He became like a chess master who could see 10 moves ahead. Where others saw failure, he saw information. He used every defeat as a map leading him to success. The humiliation of losing once became the fire that would never let him settle for second place again. In moments of solitude, he questioned himself not with self-pity, but with purpose. What did I do wrong? What did they do right? That self-examination gave him an edge most men lacked. He understood that pride blinds a man faster than defeat ever could. By admitting his mistakes, he gained wisdom that no victory could ever teach. As time passed, his scars became his armor. He no longer feared failure because he had faced it and survived. While others tried to hide their past losses, he carried his openly, not as shame, but as proof that he was unbreakable. When people doubted him, he didn't argue. He simply reminded himself of how many times he had risen from the ashes. Every defeat also revealed something deeper. The world does not pity the weak. It only respects those who refuse to stay down. He saw how easily people give up after a single loss, and he promised himself he would never be one of them. For him, defeat was temporary, but giving up was eternal. That mindset separated him from everyone else around him. He learned to be calm in moments when others would panic. During failures, when everything seemed lost, his silence intimidated his enemies. They expected anger or despair, but what they saw was composure. That calmness became his weapon. It made others wonder what he was planning next. His ability to stay still while everything fell apart made people fear his return. Slowly, his defeats began to lose their power over him. What once broke him now built him. What once humiliated him now hardened him. Every time life knocked him down, he stood taller. Every time he lost something, he replaced it with experience. He was no longer afraid of losing because he understood that a man who fears loss will never truly win. By the time his enemies celebrated his downfall, he was already rebuilding in silence. While they spoke, he strategized. While they rested, he trained. His defeats had turned him into a different kind of man, one who didn't chase revenge out of emotion, but waited until the timing was right. For him, every fall was just a pause before the next rise, and every loss was the beginning of his next victory. When he finally rose to power, it did not happen overnight. It was the result of years of endurance, silence, and strategy. His rise was not a story of luck or opportunity. It was the outcome of watching, waiting, and striking at the exact right moment. He knew that timing was everything. Too soon, and the world would reject him. Too late, and someone else would take his place. So he waited in the shadows, letting others underestimate him while he quietly prepared his move. Those who once ignored him began to notice his confidence. He didn't shout for authority, he carried it. His presence in a room changed the air around him. People couldn't explain it, but they could feel it. He had learned that real power doesn't need to announce itself, it is felt. His calm, his discipline, and his unshakable focus made even his enemies take him seriously. When the moment finally came, he stepped forward with such certainty that it felt as if destiny itself had been waiting for him. Leadership came to him through struggle, not inheritance. Every position he gained, he earned through cunning and patience. He had built networks of loyalty, not through fear alone, but through the belief that he could deliver what others could only promise. Those who worked under him saw him as a man of results. When he spoke, his words carried weight because his actions had already proven their worth. He understood the psychology of leadership. People did not follow him because they loved him. They followed him because they respected him, and sometimes because they feared what would happen if they didn't. He knew how to balance both. A ruler who is loved can be betrayed. A ruler who is feared endures longer. He believed that emotions change, but respect remains. His leadership style was not gentle, but it was effective. He demanded discipline and loyalty. He expected his followers to move with precision and purpose. There was no room for weakness or hesitation. He believed that in leadership, kindness without strength leads to chaos. To him, order was mercy, and control was protection. The people who stood with him learned that success requires sacrifice, and leadership requires solitude. He began transforming the system around him. He replaced weak hands with strong ones, quiet voices with decisive ones. His goal was not just to hold power, but to fortify it, to build a structure so strong that even if he fell, it would stand firm. He moved through opposition like a storm, swift, calculated, and impossible to stop once in motion. Those who once tried to block him now found themselves obeying him. With leadership came enemies in greater numbers. Power attracts both loyalty and jealousy, but he had prepared for that. He knew that the higher a man rises, the more dangerous the air becomes. So he built walls of loyalty around himself, men and women who owed their success to him, who would protect him not out of love, but out of shared destiny. He understood that alliances are not built on emotion, but on necessity. He carried his authority with a rare kind of confidence, one that made others believe that he could not be defeated. That belief became a weapon stronger than any army. People began to see him as invincible, and that image alone crushed much of the resistance before it could even form. In the battlefield of politics and power, perception is often greater than truth, and he mastered that art completely. Leadership did not make him proud, it made him vigilant. He understood that every throne sits on shifting ground. So he never stopped learning, never stopped observing. He trusted few, and even among those few, he trusted no one completely. His journey to power had taught him that loyalty can fade faster than light in the dark. So he always prepared for betrayal, even from his closest circle. And yet, despite the storms that came with leadership, he remained calm. His mind was steady, his will unshaken. He had risen from dust and defeat to stand as the ruler he had dreamed of becoming. Every step, every scar, every failure had led him to that very place. In his heart, he knew that this was not the end of his story. It was only the beginning of the empire he was destined to command. When power settled in his hands, the weight of leadership revealed itself in new ways. Enemies began to appear not just beyond his borders, but within them. Betrayal hid behind smiles, and daggers were carried in words rather than hands. But he was not the kind of man to be blindsided. He had learned long ago that trust must be earned, not given. Every whisper of disloyalty was investigated. Every move of an opponent was studied. His mind became sharper than a blade, always thinking 2 steps ahead, always ready to counter before the attack even began. He began to build a circle of loyal guards, men whose loyalty was unshakable because it was tested through hardship. They weren't chosen for their strength alone, but for their obedience and faithfulness. He treated them not as tools, but as extensions of his will. They knew his silence, his anger, and his approval without a word spoken. In a world full of deceit, his small circle became his fortress. And though the world outside was full of conspiracies, inside his circle, his command was absolute. Enemies who once mocked him now feared even his silence. He had a way of turning fear into control without needing to raise his voice. It was the fear of his presence, of his unpredictable mind, that kept many in line. He understood that to rule a land filled with wolves, you must become the wolf they dare not challenge. So he acted decisively, punishing betrayal not out of cruelty, but to protect the foundation of his rule. Each act of justice sent a message. Loyalty was rewarded, but treachery was not forgiven. He used strategy like a master chess player. He never moved a piece without knowing where it would land. His enemies plotted against him, but their plans rarely reached completion, because he always seemed to know before they acted. It was as if his eyes were everywhere. Some said he was lucky, others said he had spies. But the truth was simpler. He had instincts that rarely failed him. He could read people's intentions just by watching their eyes, by the way they breathed when they spoke to him. Even as he strengthened his control, he understood the importance of appearing compassionate. He helped the poor, rebuilt cities, and rewarded loyalty. These acts weren't just political, they were part of his vision. He wanted his people to see him not as a tyrant, but as a protector, someone who brought stability when chaos could have destroyed everything. His leadership balanced power with purpose, and that made him both respected and feared. But power never comes without resistance. Foreign forces and rival groups tried to weaken him through manipulation, lies, and alliances. Yet he knew the art of patience. He didn't rush to crush his enemies, he let them expose themselves first. Once they revealed their true motives, his counterattack was precise and final. He didn't waste energy on unnecessary battles. Every move he made had meaning. Every silence was a warning. He began to understand that ruling wasn't just about controlling people, it was about controlling narratives. So he shaped how his story was told. Through words, through actions, through his image, he made sure that his name carried strength wherever it was spoken. He knew that if people believed in his power, even his enemies would begin to doubt their chances of success. It was not just about having power, it was about making others believe that power was eternal. With every victory, his confidence grew, but he never allowed arrogance to blind him. He knew pride was the downfall of many great men. Instead, he stayed rooted in discipline and reflection. Each night, he reviewed his choices, studied his enemies, and planned his next move. Power had not made him reckless. It made him more cautious, more alert, and more aware of how easily it could all be lost. In moments of solitude, he remembered the path that brought him there, the betrayals, the sacrifices, the years of struggle. They reminded him why he could never afford to let his guard down. The same world that once ignored him would now do anything to see him fall. But he had come too far, endured too much, and learned too deeply to ever allow that to happen. His strength was no longer physical. It was mental, spiritual, and unbreakable. His leadership became a symbol of endurance. People began to whisper his name, not with defiance, but with a kind of respect mixed with awe. Even his enemies admitted, though reluctantly, that his rise was not luck. It was destiny shaped by willpower. He had built a legacy not just through wars and politics, but through resilience and intelligence. And in a world where betrayal was the norm, his ability to survive and lead made him a legend of his own time. As years passed, his enemies began plotting with greater cunning. They no longer attacked openly. They wove webs of deceit through diplomacy and hidden alliances. They tried to isolate him, to make him appear as the villain before the world. But he had long understood the nature of political warfare. Sometimes battles were not fought with bullets, but with whispers. He saw through their smiles, through their words of peace that hid blades of betrayal. Instead of reacting in haste, he stayed calm, gathering knowledge before making his move. Patience became his most dangerous weapon. He started to strengthen his intelligence network. Every rumor, every movement, every alliance against him was reported to him before it could grow. His ability to stay informed gave him the upper hand. Enemies thought they were outsmarting him, but he was already several steps ahead. He allowed some of their plans to unfold only to strike when the time was perfect. His patience often lured his opponents into traps they didn't even realize they were walking into. The Treatans Zemi, Bezed, Le2D rise within his borders. From someone you silence them. Importance of he, str, tade, ategi. How to viti, humanity slap, before it me, and you united. He knew how to turn enemy against enemy, how to weaken their trust in each other until their unity crumbled. He mastered the art of creating confusion in the enemy's mind, making them destroy themselves from within. This was not luck. It was wisdom gained through years of hardship and observation. He began to train his commanders in the same mindset. He didn't just want soldiers who could fight. He wanted thinkers who could outsmart the enemy. He taught them that battles are won in the mind before they are fought on the field. Every mission was planned with precision, every risk measured carefully. He made sure no decision was based on emotion, only on logic and purpose. His leadership became a school of discipline, turning ordinary men into masters of calculated action. His enemies underestimated his ability to recover from setbacks. Whenever they believed he was cornered, he found a new path, a new way to rise again. It was as if defeat fueled his fire rather than extinguishing it. Every challenge became a lesson. Every mistake a step toward mastery. He didn't run from hardship. He studied it until it revealed its weaknesses. His resilience made him nearly impossible to break. As his strategies succeeded, his enemies grew desperate. They launched propaganda, spreading lies to damage his image. But the people who lived under his rule saw through those lies because they had witnessed his strength firsthand. They knew his sacrifices, his sleepless nights, his constant fight to protect his nation's dignity. The loyalty of his people became his invisible shield, stronger than any army. It was built not through fear, but through the respect he had earned. He also mastered the art of timing. He knew when to speak and when to remain silent. When his enemies provoked him, he didn't always respond immediately. Sometimes silence spoke louder than words. It made his enemies anxious, made them reveal their weakness. He understood that restraint is a form of strength. His calmness under pressure confused his rivals because they never knew what he was truly planning. In the darkest moments when betrayal and pressure surrounded him, he never lost faith. His trust in Allah gave him clarity. He believed that no matter how powerful his enemies seemed, truth and courage would always prevail. This faith guided his judgment and kept his heart strong. He knew victory wasn't just in conquering lands, it was in conquering fear. And as long as he remained fearless, defeat was impossible. He began rebuilding the morale of his forces with that same belief. He reminded them that battles are won not just with weapons, but with hearts filled with purpose. He turned hardship into motivation, loss into determination. Under his command, men fought not because they had to, but because they wanted to. They believed they were defending something sacred: honor, faith, and identity. Through intelligence, patience, and unshakable belief, he turned the tide once more in his favor. What others thought would destroy him only made him stronger. His strategies became lessons in power and endurance. He had proven that real strength isn't about domination. It's about control, discipline, and unwavering faith, even in the face of chaos. His resilience became the foundation of his legacy, one that no enemy could ever erase. The time finally came when his patience transformed into decisive action. He had watched, waited, and gathered enough strength to strike with precision. Every move he made was calculated, every command backed by strategy. He understood that revenge was not about anger. It was about restoring balance and dignity. So, when he launched his counterattack, it wasn't out of hatred, but out of justice. His troops marched not just to fight, but to reclaim their pride, their honor, and their faith. The battlefield became a place where his years of endurance met his moment of redemption. The early hours of the campaign were filled with tension. His men, once disheartened by earlier defeats, now moved with renewed fire. He had ignited something inside them, a belief that this time they were not merely soldiers. They were defenders of their destiny. His leadership radiated confidence. Even under the harsh desert sun, when exhaustion weighed heavy, his voice kept their spirits unbroken. He reminded them that victory belongs not to the strongest body, but to the strongest heart. That message turned fatigue into energy and fear into courage. When the battle began, his strategy unfolded like poetry. He divided his army into smaller, more flexible groups that could move swiftly through the terrain. His understanding of the land became his weapon. While the enemy relied on numbers and arrogance, he relied on intelligence and precision. He used surprise as his ally, striking from angles his opponents never expected. The sound of his army's march became the rhythm of determination, echoing through the sands as if destiny itself was on their side. The enemy, confident from their previous victories, was caught off guard. They underestimated the man they once defeated. But now he was not the same. He had learned from every wound, every loss, every betrayal. He anticipated their every move, countering with brilliance and speed. The enemy lines began to collapse, not because they lacked power, but because they lacked the unity and purpose that his men possessed. What once was chaos in his camp was now order. What once was fear was now faith. He moved through the ranks, not staying behind but leading from the front. His presence gave his soldiers courage beyond measure. When they saw him fighting alongside them, their hesitation vanished. Every soldier began to fight with the intensity of 100. The cries of war mixed with the chants of faith, creating an atmosphere that no enemy could intimidate. The balance of power began to shift rapidly, and his comeback became not just a battle, but a statement to the world that courage and faith never truly die. In the thick of the fight, he showed restraint and wisdom. He didn't seek unnecessary destruction. He sought victory with honor. He reminded his men to fight with discipline, to remember that their mission was justice, not vengeance. His compassion, even in conflict, revealed his true character. He wanted to win hearts as much as he wanted to win the war. His ability to maintain dignity in the heat of revenge distinguished him from those who fought for pride alone. As the sun began to set, the tide of the war turned completely. The once confident enemy began retreating, unable to withstand the relentless force of his army. What was once a symbol of their dominance turned into their defeat. The same ground where he once fell was now the ground of his triumph. It was not just a military victory, it was the fulfillment of patience, wisdom, and faith. He had transformed humiliation into strength, loss into legacy. When the battle ended, the silence that followed was heavy with meaning. The air itself seemed to carry respect for the man who had risen from defeat to dominance. His soldiers celebrated not just their survival, but their redemption. They saw in him the living proof that no setback can destroy a person whose heart remains unshaken. The people who once doubted him now praised him as a symbol of divine justice. His victory wasn't loud, it was dignified like the calm after a long storm. After reclaiming what was once lost, he didn't seek glory for himself. He thanked Allah for the strength that guided him through darkness. He knew his success wasn't his alone. It was a mercy granted after endurance and faith. His humility after such a monumental victory set him apart from all others. While kings celebrated with pride, he reflected in gratitude. His ability to stay grounded even in glory made his legacy immortal. From that day onward, his story became a lesson written in the pages of time. It wasn't just about how he defeated his enemies. It was about how he defeated despair, fear, and doubt. He proved that true greatness is not about never falling, but about rising stronger every time you do. His revenge was not driven by hatred. It was fueled by justice, patience, and unbreakable belief in the power of perseverance. His rise after defeat became a light for generations to follow, reminding all that no one is ever truly finished if faith still lives in the heart. The aftermath of his victory was unlike any other. The land that once echoed with the cries of war now resounded with chants of triumph and unity. His soldiers, though battered and worn, stood taller than ever before. They had not only fought for a leader, they had fought for honor, for the dignity of their people, and for the truth they believed in. Their eyes reflected gratitude, not arrogance, because they knew their victory was a blessing earned through struggle and sacrifice. He walked among them not as a distant ruler but as one of their own, offering words of humility and faith. His leadership, born from patience and pain, had transformed into a bond stronger than any weapon. Even in victory, his focus was not on revenge but restoration. He looked around at the cities scarred by conflict and thought of how to rebuild them. He ensured that justice replaced chaos and discipline replaced disorder. He gave his people hope not just through his sword, but through his fairness. Instead of punishing those who had turned away in his hard times, he forgave them and called them back to serve their nation with renewed loyalty. His rule was marked by compassion after conquest, for he understood that mercy strengthens a kingdom more than cruelty ever could. He didn't allow victory to cloud his judgment. He knew that power could corrupt even the purest of intentions. So, he surrounded himself with wise advisors who reminded him of his responsibilities before Allah and his people. Each decision he made was carefully thought through, ensuring that no injustice would stain the glory of his triumph. His sense of accountability became a cornerstone of his governance, inspiring those under him to act with honesty and integrity. The people began to see him not just as a conqueror, but as a guardian of their future. As time passed, stories of his comeback spread far beyond his borders. Other rulers heard of the man who rose from defeat and led with faith rather than fear. His name became a symbol of resilience and wisdom. Envoys came from distant lands seeking alliances, inspired by his discipline and principles. He didn't boast about his victories, he let his actions speak for themselves. His reputation as a just and brave leader earned him both respect and admiration, even from those who once opposed him. He also turned his attention toward education and reform. He wanted his people to be strong not only in battle but in intellect and character. Schools were established, scholars were supported, and laws were written to ensure fairness and protection for all. He believed that the strength of an empire wasn't in its walls or weapons, but in the hearts and minds of its people. His wisdom in peace matched his courage in war, making his leadership truly complete. Yet, despite all these successes, he never forgot the struggles that brought him here. He often spent nights reflecting on the hardships that once tested his resolve. He remembered the times of betrayal, fear, and loss, and how those very moments had forged his unbreakable will. He taught his followers that suffering, when faced with faith, becomes the training ground for greatness. Every challenge he faced had a divine purpose, and he made sure others learned from his story instead of repeating his mistakes. He walked among his people freely, unafraid and unguarded. His humility made him approachable, and his kindness made him loved. When common citizens saw him, they didn't see a distant king. They saw a man who had endured pain, fought with faith, and led with compassion. His connection with the people became his greatest strength. They didn't serve him out of fear, they followed him out of love and respect. That bond between the leader and the nation made his empire stronger than ever. As peace settled across the land, prosperity began to bloom. Trade routes reopened, families reunited, and the wounds of war started to heal. Farmers returned to their fields, merchants to their markets, and scholars to their books. Everywhere he went, people greeted him with prayers and blessings. The unity that once seemed impossible after so much bloodshed now thrived under his vision. His reign became a living reminder that even after destruction, rebuilding is always possible when led by wisdom and faith. Even his former enemies began to acknowledge his greatness. They realized that his strength did not come from cruelty or greed, but from conviction and righteousness. Many who had once opposed him now sought peace, wishing to be part of the stability he had created. His sense of justice transcended borders, and his example began to reshape how leadership was understood across regions. He had turned his revenge into reform, his anger into vision, and his battle scars into symbols of hope. In the end, his triumph was not defined by how many enemies he defeated, but by how many lives he restored. His revenge was never about destruction, it was about transformation. He showed the world that true victory lies in rebuilding what was broken and inspiring others to rise above hatred. His legacy lived on as a testament that courage guided by faith can change the course of history, and that the one who forgives after winning stands taller than the one who simply conquers. After the storm of battles had ended, a calm strength settled over him. He had regained not just territory, but dignity. Yet in the quiet of victory, he did not celebrate with arrogance. Instead, he walked among his people, listening to their pain, seeing the destruction left behind. The burned villages, the broken walls, and the empty homes reminded him that war, no matter how just, always came with a price. He made a promise to himself and to his Creator that he would rebuild what was lost, not just the buildings, but the spirit of his nation. His journey from defeat to triumph would only be complete when his people could live in peace and prosperity once again. He began with compassion. The soldiers who had fought under him were not left behind after the war. He ensured that they were honored, healed, and supported. Widows and orphans were cared for, the injured were treated with dignity, and every family who had suffered was given the help they needed. He believed that leadership was not about ruling over people, but standing beside them in their hardships. His kindness turned the loyalty of his people into love, and that love became the foundation of his new rule. His leadership style inspired others to rise with him. He didn't rely on fear to maintain control. Instead, he ruled through respect. Even those who once opposed him began to see the sincerity in his heart. He forgave many of his enemies, understanding that forgiveness brings more peace than revenge ever could. His mercy did not make him weak. It made him wise. It disarmed his opponents and turned hostility into admiration. His ability to blend strength with humility made his name respected even among his former rivals. He began rebuilding his empire with purpose and patience. Roads were repaired, trade routes reopened, and people from faraway lands began to visit his cities once more. The economy flourished as he encouraged fair trade and justice for all, regardless of status or tribe. He didn't hoard wealth, he distributed it where it was needed most. His administration became known for fairness and honesty, qualities that had been lost under previous rulers. With every new reform, the land regained its life, and its people regained their hope. He also understood that an empire could not be sustained by war alone. It needed knowledge, culture, and faith. He invited scholars, builders, and teachers to his courts. Centers of learning were established, where young minds could study and innovate. He made sure that religious education remained at the heart of society, guiding people not just to worldly success, but to moral strength. His dream was to raise a generation that would protect the empire not with weapons, but with wisdom. Despite all his success, he never forgot the times when he was weak, alone, and defeated. Those memories humbled him. He often visited the very places where he once lost battles and reflected on how far he had come. He knew his strength had not come from his sword. It had come from patience, perseverance, and faith. He taught his people that losing once does not define failure, but giving up does. His personal story became a lesson engraved in the hearts of all who followed him. Foreign powers who once saw him as a threat now treated him with respect. They sent envoys offering peace and trade agreements. They realized that his leadership had created stability where there once was chaos. His reputation as a man of honor spread across borders. He did not seek dominance for pride, but for the security of his people. His empire, once fragile, now stood strong because it was built on unity and justice, not fear. He made sure that no group or region was left behind. From the smallest village to the largest city, his governance was equal and fair. He listened to his advisors, but he also listened to the voices of ordinary people. He walked among them in disguise at times to understand their struggles directly. This humility and deep concern for his citizens made him beloved beyond measure. Under his rule, even those who had nothing began to believe that they, too, had a voice. His transformation from a defeated leader to a wise ruler became the most powerful part of his story. The people who had once pitied him now looked up to him as a hero and reformer. His empire, once torn apart by division, became an example of how unity can rise from ashes. He taught that the best revenge is not destruction, but rebuilding with honor. His journey showed that real victory lies in creating peace after war, in lifting others after lifting yourself. In his later years, he focused less on expanding borders and more on strengthening hearts. He wanted his people to understand that every empire built by force will one day fall, but the empire built on justice and faith will last forever. He left behind a legacy not of fear, but of inspiration. His life proved that true leadership begins after victory, when one chooses mercy over pride, humility over power, and service over glory. His story became a timeless reminder that even after defeat, greatness is possible through steadfast faith and unwavering perseverance. As the years passed and the echoes of war faded into the background, his empire stood firm, a symbol of endurance and wisdom. But within his heart, he knew that his real mission had never been about ruling land. It had been about ruling himself. The lessons of defeat, revenge, and redemption had shaped him into something greater than a conqueror. He had become a teacher, a man whose life spoke louder than any command. His story wasn't written just in victories, but in the patience, faith, and courage it took to rise again after being broken. Every scar on his soul told a story of struggle turned into strength. He began to focus on building institutions that would last long after him. Justice became the heartbeat of his governance. He appointed judges known for integrity, scholars who valued truth, and leaders who placed service above luxury. He knew that power fades, but justice endures. He wanted his empire to outlive him not because of fear or force, but because of fairness. His people, who once trembled in uncertainty, now lived with peace in their hearts. He had proven that the greatest form of leadership is when a ruler earns the trust of his people through sincerity and righteousness. He also devoted himself to improving the lives of the poor and the weak. He ensured that no one slept hungry, no orphan was left unattended, and no widow was left alone. His compassion became the soul of his empire. He believed that strength without mercy is hollow, and success without service is meaningless. His acts of kindness weren't done for show, they came from the depth of his understanding that power is a gift, not a right. His people began to call him not just their ruler, but their protector, their father, and their hope. Even as prosperity grew, he remained humble. He dressed simply, ate modestly, and spent time with his people. He refused to be surrounded by flattery or luxury. He preferred the company of scholars, soldiers, and workers who spoke honestly. He listened more than he spoke. Those around him often marveled at how the same man who once commanded armies now sat with farmers discussing crops and trade. His humility did not lower his status, it raised it higher in the hearts of his people. He also took great care to preserve knowledge. He funded libraries, encouraged the translation of important texts, and supported poets and thinkers. He wanted future generations to learn from the past and not repeat its mistakes. His empire became known as a center of learning and innovation, where people from distant lands came to study. His vision extended far beyond his lifetime. He was building a civilization that would inspire the world. His name became synonymous not just with power, but with enlightenment and wisdom. Through all this, he never forgot his faith. Every major decision began with prayer, and every victory was met with gratitude to Allah. He constantly reminded his people that worldly glory is temporary, but righteousness is eternal. He built mosques and supported religious scholars to ensure that faith remained the guiding light of his society. His devotion gave his people strength and unity. They knew that their leader sought help not from worldly powers, but from the one who controls all things. That faith shared between ruler and people made his empire unshakable. As he grew older, he spent more time reflecting on his journey. The memories of his first defeat no longer brought him pain. They brought him gratitude. He realized that if he had not fallen, he might never have learned how to rise with wisdom. His revenge had evolved into renewal and his strength into peace. He often told his advisors that the hardest battle any man fights is not against his enemies, but against his own ego. He had won that battle long ago, and that was his greatest victory of all. He began to prepare his successors, teaching them not just how to rule, but how to serve. He told them, "Do not seek power for glory. Seek it for responsibility. Rule with justice, and Allah will rule your heart with peace." He wanted them to understand that the true measure of leadership is not in how much you control, but in how much you uplift others. His words became wisdom that echoed through generations. Even in his final days, he remained at peace. There was no fear in his eyes, only contentment. He had seen defeat and victory, betrayal and loyalty, hate and love. And through it all, he had remained steadfast. His legacy was not a castle of stone, but a foundation of values. He left his people strong, united, and guided by faith. His story was no longer just about him. It had become the story of a nation that rose from ashes through faith, courage, and perseverance. After his passing, his name continued to inspire. His enemies spoke of his bravery, his allies spoke of his wisdom, and his people spoke of his compassion. Monuments may have faded, but his example did not. Generations remembered him as the man who turned defeat into destiny, revenge into justice, and leadership into service. His life proved that greatness does not come from how much one conquers, but from how much one rebuilds. His journey became eternal, a story that lived in hearts long after his empire turned to dust. In the end, his life became more than a story. It became a message that no fall is final unless you surrender, that the real empire is not the land you rule, but the discipline and faith you build within yourself. His journey reminds us that greatness is not about crowns or thrones. It's about character. It's about standing tall when the world expects you to kneel. So when life breaks you, remember his story. Because sometimes Allah allows you to lose the world so you can gain yourself.